I have to ask, how does this guy have a job?
Is there a crisis at our southern border?
Senator.
This guy is the most incompetent person I've ever seen in my life. And besides the fact, he's a communist. You might think, no, he came from Cuba, so, just like DeSantis. Well, DeSantis' parents. No, this guy wants communism in this country. That's what he's after. That's what Democrats are after now, and they've made it painfully apparent. They're trying to indoctrinate kids in school, just like they do in, Cuba, North Korea, China, any communist country, really. They want control over your kids. Biden even said it. So did Kamala, and so did KJP. These are our kids. They're not, nobody has their own kids. They belong to society. Wrong. Anyway, I digress. Let me get on with this video. Ted Cruz goes scorched earth on Mayorkas, and it's beautiful.
Good morning, Secretary Mayorkas.
Good morning.
Is there a crisis at our southern border?
Senator.
Mr. Secretary, let me show you how someone doing his job answers a question in a straightforward manner. Chief Ortiz, is the crisis that is currently ongoing at the southern border making the border less safe for Americans and aliens alike? Answer, yes. One word, one syllable, 3 letters. That's how someone answers a question and does their job. You're being a politician misleading the American people. Let me give you a chance again. Will you show the same integrity Chief Ortiz shows? Is the crisis at the southern border making Americans less safe? Yes or no?
Senator.
Has the crisis made aliens less safe? Yes or no?
Senator.
How many migrants have died under President Biden?
Senator, your phrasing of the question is actually quite misleading.
How many migrants died in 2022?
Approaching our southern border?
Yes.
Precisely why we are seeking to exclude the smuggling
do you know the answer? Do you know how many died?
I do not.
You do not. Of course you don't. I know how many died. 853.
That is
853. And by the way, here are the numbers that have died every year. You go back to 1998, you see it's consistently between 300 and 400, 300, 400, 300, 400. Suddenly, 2021, what happens? You get in office, and that red line are dead bodies. I've been on the Rio Grande, and I've seen dead bodies floating there who've drowned. How many children have been sexually assaulted by human traffickers under the Biden administration?
Senator, this is precisely why we instituted.
I don't want a lecture. It's a question. How many children have been sexually assaulted by human traffickers under your administration?
Senator, this is exactly why on January 5th we announced
again,
the parole
do you know
program.
how many? Do you know how many children have been sexually assaulted?
This is why we.
Okay, you're going to refuse to answer that question as well. How many murderers have you released into America?
Senator, I'm not aware of any murderer whom we've.
So you don't know.
Senator, let me say something.
Do you know?
If you take a look at...
No, you don't get to give a speech. Do you know how many murderers you've released?
I'm just trying to answer your question,
How many rapists
Senator.
have you released?
Senator, I'm trying to answer your question.
You can answer, I know or I don't know.
Senator, any individual who poses a public safety threat...
How many child molesters have you
detained
released?
...and removed into the United States, from the United States.
Oh, so your testimony under oath, subject to perjury, is that you have not released any murderers, rapists, or child molesters among the 5.5 million? Is that your testimony?
Mr. Chairman, may I have the opportunity
No, you may not. You may answer my question.
You're not
Is that your testimony, yes or no?
Senator, you're not allowing me to answer your question.
I am allowing you to answer. I'm not allowing you to filibuster.
If you take a look at the pace of immigration in 2018 to 2019...
You're refusing to answer. Let's move on. Let's move on to gotaways. Gotaways are the people that get away that you know about. Now, what happened under your administration? Gotaways consistently down at this low line, boom, you get in. And they go from below 180,000 to 600,000. Now, I'll tell you this about a gotaway. You don't know, among those 600,000 a year, you have no idea how many are murderers, correct?
That is precisely why the number
Correct?
of gotaways.
Do you know how many of those are murderers?
That is precisely
So you
why.
refuse to answer the question. You know how many are rapists? Do you know how many are rapists? This is a question. You're a lawyer. You know how to answer questions. Of the 600,000, do you know how many of them were rapists?
Senator, this is why we
So again,
are.
the answer is no. Let me ask you this. Do you know how many of them are terrorists? And I don't want to, Senator, here's my lecture on this. Do you know how many of the 600,000 gotaways were terrorists? Yes or no?
Senator, we are focused on the
You
safety
refuse
and
to answer
security.
that as well. What's the result of massive gotaways? Well, one of the results is drug overdoses. And we now have, last year, over 100,000 overdoses who died, the majority from Chinese fentanyl streaming across the border.
This here is my friend Mika and her son Braxton. Really, really good kid. Braxton was an excellent welder. Still in school, learning much more how to weld. Just an all around excellent guy. Had a drug problem. Was working on it. The place he was living, he got a hold of some marijuana with some with some fentanyl in it. Didn't show up to work, so everybody was worried about him. They went over, and he was face down in his closet. Now, Mayorkas couldn't care less. Mayorkas doesn't give a shit. If he sees this video, he wouldn't care. That's what a piece of shit that man is. I see pictures like this, and it absolutely infuriates me that our border is wide open. Does it necessarily mean that the same thing couldn't have happened? No. But these fentanyl deaths are off the charts now. And it's all because of Biden, Mayorkas, Harris, this whole Democrat Party. They don't care how many people in this country die. They could care less. They want everything to go crazy. That way they can step in with the government and save everybody. In order to do that, though, you have to submit. This is socialism coming. If we don't have a good vote this in next year, if you don't make a wise choice, don't bitch at us what happens. After what happens, because it will.
Now, you told Senator Cornyn you care, but look what has happened under your policy. When you open up the border to the worst illegal immigration in our nation's history, people die. You claim you care. Mr. Secretary, that is a lie. You know, some months ago, Karine Jean-Pierre stood up at a White House briefing and said, people are not just walking across the border. Was she telling the truth? This is a photograph from just one day along the Rio Grande of hundreds of thousands of people walking across the border. You have allowed this to happen. The photograph that was before, what are these wristbands?
I don't know what they are.
You
Senator.
don't know what they are. Mr. Secretary, you have just testified to the American people you're incompetent at your job, because I've been to the southern border, and if you go to the southern border, along the southern border, you see thousands of these wristbands because the illegal immigrants wear them. The drug cartels, every color corresponds to how many thousands of dollars they owe the cartels. You have turned these cartels into multi-billion-dollar criminal organizations, and these are modern-day leg irons because these are children being sold into sex slavery, and you don't even know what they are. That is astonishing. Mr. Secretary, how many children have been sold into sex slavery under your administration?
Senator, we are taking it to the cartels.
How many
and the
children have been
smuggling
sold into sex slavery?
in
Do you know how many children have been sold into sex slavery?
to an unprecedented degree.
Mr. Secretary, I want to say to you right now,
It is
your
precisely-
behavior is disgraceful, and the deaths, the children assaulted, the children raped, they are at your feet, and if you had integrity, you would resign. And I will tell you, the men and women of the Border Patrol, they've never had a political leader undermine them. They despise you, Mr. Secretary, because you're willing to let children be raped to follow political orders. This is a crisis. It's a disgrace. And you won't even admit this human tragedy is a crisis.
Claiming 1 minute chairman time, Mr. Secretary, would you like to respond to any of those questions?
What the senator said was revolting. I'm not going to address it.
Your refusal to do your job is revolting.